Poke the Bear is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into Poke the Bear episode 301, presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5, and we're presented by Game Time. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Connor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. I'm a little disappointed, though. I missed episode 300. I had a busy last Friday. So we are going to rain check the big 300 episode. We were going to do me, you, and Ty in one episode. Maybe we'll have to do that more going forward. We'll have to do that at some point. Maybe around the deadline. I don't want to waste that. Like, I don't want that to be
true.
like, you know, a game against the Ducks and the Islanders or something. Like, I want to have that be important. Maybe we can do something for the deadline. I think that probably makes the most amount of sense. We'll pencil Ty in for that, even though he has no idea I'm doing that. But good.
He just immediately logs out as soon as you pop up on the screen.
He's gone. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Jose Canseco pops up. Have you seen that trend recently where like kids will have random men be like on the screen when they FaceTime their mom, and their mom will be like, "Who is this? What happened?" And then it'll just be Jose Canseco on Ty's camera, and I'll be like shaking in my boots over here.
Yeah, exactly. Ty would be amped. We should actually just get him on. Like, it can't be that tough to get Jose Canseco on for a hockey podcast, right? Like, I feel like you would can't be on anything. Dude's probably going to be in, like, I think if you pay like $50 on like Cameo, you could probably get him for like an hour. So
yeah, you should be able to get podcast guests through Cameo.
Yeah,
we split the fee 3 ways. Like, I think that's worth it. He'd probably have a lot of great Bruins takes.
Just the most random people out there. Just like the slap chop guy, Bam Margera, and Richard Karn. We'll just have like a.
Who are any of those people?
Oh, dude, how do you not know those people? You don't know Bam Margera? So you know the Costco guys. Wow. Okay. Well,
Bam Margera.
He's from Jackass. Who is
okay.
Available
I love
on
Jackass.
Cameo for okay.
I love Jackass. I didn't know his name. I know like Steve-O and Wee Man and Jackass 3.5 or 3D. I will like be in tears laughing every single time I watch that. Like, that is peak cinema to me.
Yes.
Nothing gets better. Or like the Poo Cocktail Supreme. Oh my God. My mind was blown when I watched that as a kid. I was like, human beings I didn't know had the capabilities to do things like this.
All the power to them. And speaking of poo and jackasses, my vote what played out on the ice on Wednesday.
Oh, yep. That was the Poo Cocktail Supreme at Madison Square Garden. Bruins lose 3-2. They were up 2-1. Cole Koepke misses. We never saw the replay. But
I know you would have thought that like the dude had a wide open net and like stumbled over himself based on the way they then didn't show it at all. They were too busy gassing up Matt Rempe for like 12 minutes of that third period. I was like, what an awful product that was. That was a miserable game all around.
They never stopped talking about Jody Shelley's goal on Brian Boucher, which they almost missed a goal because of it.
They missed. Was it Lindholm's? It was Lindholm's goal, right?
They missed the face-off. They missed the face-off. They came back, and like Pastrnak scored 2 seconds later. I don't know. And what's funny is TNT's ratings, by the way, are in the toilet. And hockey's ratings in general have not been great. It's TNT and ESPN. So I like the TNT product mostly. So like the intermission show is great, and like I like what TNT's done. But I think it's interesting. I think the decrease in ratings comes down to the fact that the biggest markets are struggling this year. Yeah. Streaming exists. Illegal streams exist. The NBA faced this. I don't know. Do you think it's a problem?
I mean, it's also, I think
it's not great.
Streaming has an impact. I think a lot of the bigger markets not doing that well, between the Rangers being miserable for most of the year. The Bruins have not been good. Flyers have been bad. There's that part of it. And also, like, I think just the network's also picking bad matchups. Like, who gives a shit? Speaking of the Chicago Blackhawks, I feel like we rip them every week. No one cares about them anymore. Tell us when Connor Bedard gets good. Meanwhile, he gets ripped on the TNT break. I don't know if you saw it. They were like saying he's playing pond hockey. which again, you're going to gas him up for 2 years, but also the team around him is just trash. So stop wasting your time with the Blackhawks. And also, like, I don't know, do people want to watch the Seattle Kraken Ducks? Kraken Ducks, Kraken Sharks, like
Kraken Ducks. They were on ESPN the other night, weren't they? Or was it Ducks Stars? It was one of the two.
Yeah, and it's like no one cares about them. Sharks, like, again, wait a little bit longer until you want to give like Celebrity and those guys a little bit of a run there, but like no one cares about the Seattle Kraken, the most milquetoast mid roster construction ever. Like, there's a lot of these teams that I understand like wanting to branch out to new markets, but like if the audience isn't there, it's not there. So I think it's kind of been a mix of different things. The fact that a lot of the tried and true markets, really kind of struggling, or I mean, even the case of the Bruins, they've been in the mix this year, but also the product has not been fun to watch, right? So I think that also plays into it as well. So, but a lot of these matchups you look at, I'm like, all right, I don't want to see XYZ out there on the ice. There's not a lot of ones that, if I'm flicking through like the different channels on like YouTube TV, I'm not sticking around to watch, again, the Kraken do anything. I don't want anything to do with the Seattle Kraken.
So boring. Utah's kind of boring. Yeah, it's funny because the Bruins Rangers game on Saturday actually rated
that was
really high.
Yeah,
for ABC
Saturday game. Yeah. So again, like the tried and true is still sticking with those teams, and I understand that. But like, there are also some teams that, if they're that bad, like Panther last Saturday, right? The lead into Bruins Rangers was Panthers Blackhawks, and it was 5-1. It was miserable.
Terrible.
Like,
that Blackhawks team was awful.
Florida are obviously is the reigning Cup champions. So they have a little bit of a bump, but still not huge for that market, right? And Blackhawks, who in Chicago is watching that dog shit team that they put together?
Can you imagine?
Yeah, give me a break.
No thanks. And that's why, again, Bruins fans who want to rebuild, look at the Blackhawks, look at the Sabres, look at these miserable teams. But Bruins lose to the Rangers Wednesday, one night after having a really nice win against the Wild, 3-0 on Tuesday. And it's frustrating because you should get a point against the Rangers. Like, you're right there in MSG a couple days after beating them at home, and a day after a really nice defensive battle against the Wild where you outplayed them. And it's just forward, back. And that's just sort of been the whole season, it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think there's any revelations or anything off of the way those games played out. It's just more of the same, right? And again, I think like the last couple of weeks or the last week or so, maybe they are playing well. Like they're playing the right direction. Did not start well at all in that Rangers game, and it wasn't really a good performance, right? But they did enough to, at least, as you said, get a point, right? Like they take that 2-1 lead. And if you're a team that is desperate and every single point matters, that's when we have to grind out and do what you can to get at least a point out of that matchup. To go into that one, it's the first time all season when the Bruins have not recorded a point after holding a lead going into the third period. Tough timing there for that to finally happen in a game as important as that one against a team in the Rangers who are behind you in the standings. But it's just par for the course, right? Like, haven't we all seen this coming? I feel like now we're getting to the point where we can chart out where these losses are going to be, because the Bruins have stretches of good play. A lot of times it's at home where, they exceed expectations. Like the Wild are a good team. I think they're the best road team actually in the NHL this year, the Minnesota Wild. So the Bruins really played well in that game. You're feeling good about where you are. Most of that game on Wednesday was ugly, but what do you know? Pasternak bails you out. You get a good bounce there with Lindholm gets the goal. And you're doing what seems to be enough to grind out that game. That's one where you get the 2 points and you survive in advance. It wasn't pretty, but who gives a shit? You go forward. Even if you get a point, you'll take that. And once again, it's just there's too many kind of deficiencies across that roster that, the margin error you have is not going to be enough to get you a win at that point. So whether it's, again, I know the PK was technically 3 for 3, but Trocheck scores 1 second after that one expires. So a power play goal, I'm going to call it, when you look at just where they were scrambling.
For the sake of our arguments,
yes. But then most importantly, I mean, the power play had a stretch for a while there where they were playing pretty well. And they had like a 30% success rate the last 5 games going into it. Just nothing. It had absolutely nothing to show for it against the Rangers, right? 3 power play opportunities, 3 total shots on goal over those 6 minutes, 0 high danger chances, and the Rangers have 1 high danger chance, and it leads to Chris Kreider giving them the lead in the third period. Again, it's just frustrating because you look at just how important these points matter right now, where every single game, it's not just you needing to get the points, but also you get to look at the standings, to look at 6 or 7 other teams to where they are and how they're doing. And this was an opportunity where a lot of teams weren't playing on Wednesday to at least solidify your spot, claw back into the mix. If they won that game, they'd be back in the playoff picture, even if it was just for a short time with the games in hand. But I mean, we've already hit the point, Evan, right? Where like every single point matters. Like they've squandered multiple opportunities to pad their lead, to have some breathing room in what has been kind of a mid-Eastern Conference. It's not like anyone's running away with things. They're only 7-8 points out of like first in the Atlantic. Like,
yeah, they're not far out.
Yeah, there's not like they are buried, and like right now you're probably looking at just the wild card, but like
time to buy. It's time to buy, Connor.
So it's frustrating where you look at this team and how many times they've made things hard on themselves, and that was yet another example of that would have been a quality win in terms of just getting the results, right? Like they did not play well. They had under 20 shots on goal for was like the 7th time I think this year, but a win's a win, and they could win ugly. And once again, they just refuse to let any sort of momentum carry over. I think they've only won 3 or more games once this year, and that is not going to be a recipe for success, especially for this team where you need to stack wins right now. It's to leave New York with 0 points. That's a backbreaker. And
to give up that shorty, it's such backbreaking fashion, and it gets away. And what's funny is that 2 goals they had were in succession. It was like bing, boom, like just boom, boom. That's what it was. It was, and then Korpisalo was playing pretty well, and just to give up that shorthanded goal. And to me, I texted you and Ty this after the game on Wednesday against the Rangers, and it's like, you see their lack of skill when it comes to the power play. You see just how far off they are from everybody else in terms of skill. It's a lot of puck battles along the walls. It's a lot of dumping it in. It's a lot of, contested zone entries, and just they don't have a lot of, settling it down, moving around, playmaking, passing. You'll see it occasionally, but you didn't see it at all against the Rangers, and it continues to kill them. I mean, we've said it 1,000 times this year. Imagine if this power play was league average. And
they are 14-7-1. Sorry to cut you off. 14-7-1 when they've scored at least 1 power play goal. So boom. Just being pedestrian has you operating a 660 winning percentage. Like, be the world of a difference if you just, again, we're 17th in the league. You'd be doing backflips.
I was going to say, you don't have to have it every game. You don't have to have power play goal every game, but imagine that 14-7-1 becomes 18-6-2 or something. And it's like, okay, that's 10 more points and you're in a much better spot. So the power play, does McAvoy run it? I continue to go back to, guys need to be moving around more. Pastrnak does not need to be in the one-timer spot. He was back in it against the Rangers. Yeah. It's like, man, he doesn't need to be there. Move him around. And I know they played the Rangers twice in 1 week. I don't know if it was because they wanted to switch things up, but move him around. Moving him around is the best thing that they can do. But Sweeney spoke prior to the second period. But first, one thing he didn't talk about, I was curious about this. I thought he'd mentioned Prize Picks. You know what he would have said? He would have said Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long over at Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and it's now or never. Now or never. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the big old game. Prize Picks is also giving away a free pick for the big game where one of the starting quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, will only need to throw 1 yard to win. If you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can win real cash. Check out the promos tab to tail any of our Super Sweat Millie winners' big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. So I take that every time. Hockey-wise, David Pastrnak, come on. Another goal against the Rangers on Wednesday night. Continues to produce. I go with David Pastrnak right now. That's the best one you can do. So download the app today and use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app, use code CLNS, get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Run your game. So Don Sweeney spoke prior to the second period on the TNT broadcast. They really grilled him on Team Canada.
Of course. Riveting.
It's like, do people really care about what he thinks about that Team Canada roster? I know he's running it, but like his team is in a very weird limbo period where they might be selling for the first time in many, many years. But they did ask him about it. They did ask him about the trade deadline. And Don Sweeney said, well, it's been a little unique for us this year, getting out of the gate not as fast as we would like. We're in the middle of things. It's a tough exercise to sort of play both sides of the street, but that's almost every year what a general manager is required to do, and test what's out there, what's available, how you can improve, hopefully. We have some areas we would like to, but we have to keep an eye. We've missed Hampus Lindholm all year, at least the last 40 games, and it's affected our group. But everybody goes through injuries. You got to battle through it. Got to find a way while I'm out there trying to improve the club. I don't know why I read like you meant it. That's how you know. I'm just going through the motions reading this. If we have more injuries or we don't do the job between now and the deadline, we may have to take a different path. So I actually just got done recording Bruins with Scott McLaughlin, and I read that quote exactly because that's Scott's tweet. So Scott, yes. I hope Scott transcribed it correctly. Yes. But I said to Scott, I think they're leaning towards a buy. Now he said, I think they realize that they need to probably sell. Now, obviously they're not going to be as quick to want to sell or retool as we do because we're not tied to the roster. We didn't make the decisions. I'm sure if you and I were out there putting the roster together, we'd be like, no, come on guys, believe in this roster and would want to invest. What did you make of those comments?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of view it as them still preaching patience right now, which I can see why they'd want to do that because no one wants to accept the reality where things aren't going right, especially if you're a person that helped build this roster. You don't want to accept that, like, hey, we went into this year thinking we were legitimately better than a team that made it to the second round and actually put up a pretty good fight against the Panthers. Like, as much as a few of those games are blowouts, I think the Bruins gave them a pretty tough test during that entire run.
Yeah.
And I think for them, you like look at the way they made additions this offseason, and you think they're more equipped to go even further and to now hit a point where you might have to accept that you got to sell, and what that means not only for the team that you had expectations for, but also your own job security. Of course, you don't want to accept that you got to wave the white flag and punt on this year. That being said, I do think it is something where, yes, it makes sense that they still want to hold out hope. He mentions Hampus Lindholm coming back, and I think that will definitely help, right? But he has to add the qualifier, which is kind of echoing what Cam Neely said of, like, if they don't improve the players on the ice, then they do have to make some tough decisions there. And then what happens an hour later? They let go of the rope. They lose on the road again. The Bruins are 1-8-1, by the way, in 10 road games since the holiday break. 1-8-1.
I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah, 1-8-1. So,
not good.
And you look at the way the power play is, and I just wrote a column for the Globe about this today. It's like it makes sense as to why they are trying to grab any sort of optimism or hope of, like, Lindholm coming back. And yes, you could make a very rational argument that, like, Lindholm coming back, where he was probably your best skater at the time of his injury, can further staple down the defense a little bit and could really probably give your power play a big boost, right? Like, and again, maybe that means instead of it being 30th, you're 23rd. You'd take that at this point. Shit.
I'm fine with that.
But, right, like, two things. One, I still think that's also a lot to ask for a guy in Lindholm coming off of a knee injury to be like, all right, just be what you were in November, right? Like, I mean, we saw like even last year where it wasn't his best season, Lindholm, and he was dealing with like a foot injury that was nagging. Like, again, for a guy whose game is built around that mobility that he has for a 6'5" guy, skating on a busted knee, even if you've had 3 months to recover, not great. So you're already asking a lot for that guy. And even if he is Lindholm of November, like October through November, and he's impacting the game and he's, scoring points and helping your power play, that's all well and good. But it is something where does that return for Lindholm mitigate the fact that you're still short probably a top 6 center and at least like 2 scoring wings, right? Like that alone is not going to be enough to get you back into the picture. And like, again, this team could still like be, if like Pastrnak keeps on going nuclear and Swayman's playing like he did, not that he's going to have a shutout every game, but playing more or less as he's been since middle of December. I think he's got like a .915 save percentage since in his last like 14 games. Yeah. So if he's playing well and Pasternak's playing well, you'll be competitive, you hope. But like, if you're just holding out hope that Lindholm's going to right the ship, like, I think you're just trying to imagine a reality where this team is just one guy internally away. And it's like, if you want to tell me that, you want to trade for, Alex Tucker or someone like that, like a scoring winger, that will help. And that, damn, if you're the Bruins, like management, that's pretty appealing as to like, we are maybe just one guy away from making some sort of a run here. But man, like you just look at the deficiencies on this roster and I can't see how, being realistic about things, you can paint a picture where this team has the it factor, right? And even if they make the playoffs, can they go on a run? Or are you just setting yourself up for a gentleman's sweep against Florida or Washington, right? Like at some point you got to be realistic with what's happened this year. Not a lot's gone right. Doesn't mean that all of a sudden we're heading into the dark ages or anything like that. Like I think we agree that this team still has a pretty good foundation. If you're bold this summer, you can really get back to being a competitive team when you've got guys like Pastrnak and McAvoy, Swayman, what have you. But I don't know if that's going to do enough. But that optimism is not going to help you out for right now as you continue to squander points at critical times down the stretch here.
At the beginning of the year, we talked a lot about how everybody was playing worse than they should be, except for Hampus Lindholm and like Andrew Peeke and like a couple guys. And since then, Swayman has, gotten back to form. Pastrnak has been, a Hart Trophy vote, candidate guy. Morgan Geekie's gotten a lot better. Pavel Zacha has been better. But Elias Lindholm still hasn't been. And Charlie Coyle and Brandon Carlo and Nikita Zdorf and all these guys who should be contributing haven't been. And have been below where they should be. And again, I go back to like, why think that's going to change? Like if it does, and we'll get into that in a second, then great. But isn't it too little too late? Aren't we past that? Like we're in early February, Four Nations happens, and then we have like 2 or 3 games, then the trade deadline happens. So I don't know what else he needs to see. I don't know what else they need to see if they are really mulling over buying, if they're mulling over adding guys to this lineup. And I think they could be good next year. I don't think that they're going to be, I don't think they're going to stink next year unless something drastic happens these last couple months. But I can't safely sit here and be like, yep, they could compete in the playoffs. And I know that they built this roster to be better in the playoffs. I understand that. But I don't know how can they even get in the playoffs? Can they even get in? And this team needs draft capital. This team needs to bolster the prospect pool to try to help themselves going forward. But first, our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. Again, it's early February. Super Bowl is going to come and go. And then it's, it's kind of a dead season. There's not a lot going on. So when there's something going on, when there's a game in town you want to go to, or a play, or a concert, or a comedian comes to town, by God, go to Game Time, because they are going to hook you up. They got all-in pricing, so you're never going to be crushed by fees at the end when you're like, why is this $36 more than what I thought I was buying? Nope, they have all-in fees. It's from the start. No surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And then obviously the lowest price guarantee, which we love. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if it's not the lowest price guaranteed. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Connor, what time is it?
Evan, breaking news. It's game time.
It's game time.
You thought I was going to say like Pettersson got traded to the Bruins.
There was a little part of me that was like, I wonder if Trent Frederick just got traded. That would be awesome if that happened at the end of game time. So in terms of like what more Sweeney needs to see, and we've talked about this, if they go on a run, if they go on a stretch, I don't see them going on a run. And even if they did, let's say they won. I think they have 8 games up to the trade deadline.
Yes.
Let's say they won 6. Okay, that's a good stretch. It's a good stretch. Let's say they won 6. Unless they outplayed 5 of those 6 teams and didn't get killed in the other 2, and they were like legitimate losses, I can't find myself going to the other side and saying like, nope, invest in this team. And I know that Tampa's mediocre, and I know that Detroit and Ottawa and Montreal are still on the cusp, and Columbus. I get that. But don't you kind of want to reload over the deadline and over the offseason to sort of compete with those guys going forward rather than trying to push your chips or almost all your chips to the middle for this team? For this team, there's not much more I can see.
Yeah, I think it comes down, right? Like, you look at the way, like, what this team has showcased so far. Like, where do you see the optimism coming from other than you're just hoping that David Pastrnak continues to go nuclear and Jeremy Swayman just continues to bail you out? And like, hell, you look at like some of these other teams that are, around you in the mix. Like, again, as you said, Tampa's been up and down. Columbus has a lot of skill, but they now don't have Marchenko. They've been dealing with injuries. Ottawa's got Pinto's now out. Josh Norris is out. Like, you have a lot of breaks going your way. It's not like you are now just being buried by sleeping giants or juggernauts. Like, everyone else that's in that mix have faults in their games, or they're young teams that haven't been exposed to these playoff runs yet. So I can see the Bruins looking at that and be like, we can outlast these teams. Like, we're on the ropes, so we can manage that. But what is that getting you, right? If it leads to, again, a first round knockout, or even worse, you kind of stick with the plan and you don't make the playoffs at all. What do you have to show for that? Like, I don't know if it's just like not wanting to wave that white flag. Because I don't know if it's like fan optics, right, at that point. Because I feel like Bruins fans are either going to be pissed anyway if you make the playoffs. Like, it's not going to matter. But I feel like there'd be more of a acceptance if you make the most out of the season, and that involves trading guys that aren't going to be here for future capital, like adding more youth to the mix. Like, if this team, moves on from guys like Frederick or Coyle or what have you, and they call up Lysell and Merkulov, you figure out what you have in those guys. Maybe they aren't NHLers, but at least you find out there and you ride the wave of just what this season is. Like, I think Bruins fans would take the final 6 weeks of the season being a crapshoot if it means all of a sudden you have another first round pick or 2 seconds or something to go into this offseason, especially if you have the plan of like, listen, a lot of shit's gone wrong. If Jeremy Swayman comes back with a clean slate, if David Pastrnak is David Pastrnak, if guys are healthy, if another year gets guys like, if Elias Lindholm can have a year where it's kind of like how Nick Foligno had a rough first year and actually became pretty solid, like different players, different expectations, but maybe a year under Lindholm's belt makes him more into what he should be. If he's a 50-point guy next year, you take that for what I think the expectations are now.
Yes.
Like that's probably the expectations now, but you can map out like, all right, we are retooling on the fly here and making the most of what's been a shit year. You take that year, you flush it, and then you go into this offseason with a plan to be bold and to really kind of overhaul this roster and complement, again, a foundation of guys like Pasta and Swayman and McAvoy that are kind of all in their primes now. So it's not like you're looking at like a 4-year rebuild or anything like that. I don't think you'd have like an uproar from Bruins fans other than the fact of like, well, this sucks that we're not making the playoffs, but if you're not making it anyway, make the most of what has been a year that's gone off the rails and try to salvage it however you can. So I just look at the way the team's playing. Like, yeah, as you said, they could go and beat Vegas, a really good team on Saturday. Is that going to change my opinion? No, because
No.
What have we seen yet that is changing our opinion? And it sucks, right? Because there's nothing better than playoff hockey, and we all were expecting this team to go pretty far into May with the expectations and the personnel they had, and everything has pretty much gone wrong, and it stinks. It stinks that we'd have we might be looking at a spring we have nothing to talk about playoff wise, but it's all about making the most of the hand that's dealt to you, and a lot of it's been the Bruins doing in terms of construction, play on the ice, regressing, all that. But I think it's even more malpractice on the part of the Bruins management if you either ride things out or try to invest in a team that clearly is just like broken. Like it is not a complete respectable product right now, one that you can look up and down the depth chart as being something that can give you hope. And if you go far and you make the playoffs and you win a couple rounds, it's going to be off of David Pastrnak and Swayman and some of these star guys carrying the way. And maybe that's enough, but sure doesn't feel like it, right?
To me, I think when you look at what this team needs long-term, obviously, higher end prospects is one, but I also think you need better support guys around your core guys. The depth has not carried the load this year at all. And I don't know if you can rebuild that in a deadline. I don't think you can rebuild that in one off season, but I think that's where Sweeney does have to get creative, or whoever the GM is. I just don't see them firing Don Sweeney after one season of not making the playoffs. I just don't see it happening. But can he get creative with, do you deal a Coyle in the offseason? Do you deal a Carlo? I would assume Frederick gets dealt at the deadline. Does Brazeau? Does Peak? I think you have to get creative with who you're putting around Pastrnak and Swayman and McAvoy, because that's been what's let you down this year, is a lot of the depth pieces. And those stars, by the way, didn't play well to start the year either. Like they have not been up to par for the entirety of the season. So it's a weird time. I always say they don't need a rebuild, but a retool probably wouldn't hurt. I just wonder with Sweeney's comments. I don't see them trading everybody at the deadline. I see them trading Frederick, maybe Brazeau, maybe Peak, maybe, but that even feels like a lot for them. I see them kind of going smaller end stuff. Maybe they add a forward who's, a depth guy or something. And I'm not saying that's all the right stuff. Like I think they need draft picks. That's what I want. I want them making picks. If you could somehow get guys with control who you feel have upside, but I don't see them doing that. I see them doing smaller end stuff. And I don't know if that's going to really move the needle. And if they continue at this pace, as we've said, like this roster, they will compete for the playoffs the rest of the year.
Yeah, we'll be on March 6th, and they're probably going to be like 2-3 points out of the thing. We're going to be talking about this until I feel like once they finally make a move, whether that is moving guys off the roster or make the decision to add, right? Like whenever that's happened, I'm just going to take a deep breath, even if like it's a buy and we hate it, because it means like we at least have some clarity as to what's going on. Because I feel like, again, we are just in limbo. We are floating in the ocean right now. Just,
it's like
having no idea.
It's like that mega clip of Trump being like, we need to figure out what's going on.
Yes, exactly. I feel like I'm floating out in the Atlantic Ocean. Every game the Bruins lose, it's like a little bit of seaweed touches my leg. I go, oh! And then like I'm still just floating. Like I have no idea where I'm going, because that's how I feel like covering this team right now, because it feels like you know what the plan is, but we're just waiting for something to happen, waiting for a shoe to drop. And based on Sweeney's comments, it feels like they are still assessing all options when, again, the product on the ice seems to be kind of charting out what path they should be taking.
And the problem is for the figuring out what path, they will have a pretty nice win and then a ridiculously terrible loss. But again, even in those wins, they're not usually outplaying teams, which again, that is like, you got to see the forest through the trees here. This team just isn't really worth investing a lot of money in or assets in. I also just think like it wouldn't shock me next year if they're better. If they're better, why would that shock you?
Yes.
If Lindholm is a little bit better, if Zadorov's a little bit better, let's say Coyle and Carlo are back and they're better. Hampus Lindholm is healthy. Like, they're not going to suck. They don't need to suck, but they do need to get creative at this deadline in this offseason, and that's on the front office. That the buck stops with them on that. Connor, what can the people look forward to from you over at the Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, you can read all my stuff over at theglobeandboston.com. We have you covered every step of the way this season with recaps, features, columns, breakdowns, all that good stuff. So please read all of my stuff over there on theglobeandboston.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week. And